it's not difficult for us in this place where stillness and movement meet to concede that every facet of our life is subsumed, consumed, and impelled by what is called the will of God, or the Dharma, or the Tao. And therefore it's not difficult for us to take another step to recognize that that could be called a law of our life. There are no more choices for it. We live by that law. But we can recognize this and see it in the immediacy of our lives, the linear, the horizontal, the spiraling, whatever it is, all being brought into a present moment that is within that law. But how does it really work? This is what we need to understand. As it's been said, we have to be divine physicists, divine alchemists, and so forth. We need to understand the workings of it. This is the purpose of our exchanges, if you can call them that, here. In a time long ago, or maybe not so long ago, because it was in the time of Lao Tzu, there was one of Lao Tzu's compatriots, and who was called Li Tzu, and he chronicled what is called the things strange. And one of the stories he chronicles is about a certain official in the imperial empire who knew his past lives. And it's said about this fellow that he recalls that in one of his lives he was born as a minor official, but as it was at that time, most of them were terribly corrupt. They were greedy and manipulating and so forth, and we know that from all the Chinese movies we've seen. So when he died, and he was brought up before the king of the dead, as it's described in these annals, the king of the dead invited him to have a cup of tea. Now this official Li noticed that the cup of tea that the king of the dead had was beautiful, clear liquid, as tea should be, but the tea in his cup was thick and oily and treacly somewhat, and somehow he intuited that this potion was to erase his memories. So while the king of the dead was occupied with an aside of someone who'd come up to speak to him, the official Li tipped the cup of liquid into a pot plant. Now the king of the dead looked up the records of the official Li, and he got very angry. He said, "You're out of here." And he called in 2 burly demons who grabbed official Li, shoved him down a passageway towards a door. Official Li was squirming and fighting because he knew this was not going to be pleasant, or he felt it wasn't. But they gave him a big shove, and he felt himself falling, and the next thing he knew, he heard the words, "The black mare has given birth to a colt." And he found himself as a horse. Well, all he could do was go to the mare and suckle, and in due time he grew to be a strong and hale and hefty young colt. Well, as time went on, He hated the whip. He hated the crop coming down on his flanks. And his owner was really quite gentle about it and made sure that he had a saddle blanket under his saddle to protect him. But the grooms and the servants treated him very badly. He just hated being beaten with the whip. So much so that he couldn't stand it anymore, so he stopped eating. For 3 days he stopped eating, and he died. And, of course, in a jiff, he was back standing in front of the King of the Dead. King of the Dead, what are you doing back here so soon? You're not supposed to be back here so soon. Back you go. So, kicking and screaming, Official Li found himself again being shoved down a tunnel, and this time he finds himself overcome with the smell of feces and urine. A dog. But his owner was very kind, took care of him very, very well. So he really didn't feel that he could do anything to get out of this terrible situation that he felt so uncomfortable in. But it all became too unbearable for him after a while, so he bit his owner's leg right through to the bone. So his owner clubbed him to death. And back he was, in front of the King of the Dead. Well, the King of the Dead looked up the record, shook his head. Too soon. Too soon. So poor Official Li found himself again with the 2 burly demons lifting him up almost and carrying him to the passageway, shoving him through the door into this dark place. Dark place. He was there for some time. Really didn't know what he was. But then, somehow, he made himself come out of a crevice, and he found that he was slithering. There he was, a snake. But as a snake, when he slithered through the grass, even though he didn't like the feeling, he felt that this time he was not going to harm anyone. He wasn't going to do anything untoward. He was just going to live on fruit and grass and seeds. So in that state, he couldn't find a way out. I mean, he couldn't go and bite someone so that they'd kill him, because, that wouldn't be the thing to do. But then one day, a carriage came by. So he quickly slithered out onto the road, carriage rolled over him, and he got chopped in two. So there he was, in front of the King of the Dead again.